I co-own a car rental business with my business partner. With the pandemic hitting us hard, we lost quite a few employees who either quit or took extended vacations. This led us to hire 12 new workers, splitting the hiring duties between us, 6 each. I had to take 5 days off for some personal matters, and during this time my partner hired his batch of workers. On what was supposed to be my day off, I decided to take my girlfriend out in one of our rental cars, a blue Mercedes that I knew wasn't booked. When I went to my office to get the keys, they weren't in their usual spot. Even stranger, there were only 4 rental papers on my desk, and none of them was for the Mercedes. I called my partner to ask if he had taken the blue Mercedes. He said he hadn't and suggested checking the desk in case someone had rented it. When I told him there was no paperwork anywhere, he thought it was weird and suggested I ask a new counter person. I didn't know who he meant, and he explained that she was a new hire handling the front counter. I headed to the front counter and met the new employee who gave me this weird, flirty smile. When I asked about the Mercedes keys, she claimed the car wasn't available. I requested to see the rental papers, but when she asked which papers, I explained about the ones that should be on the desk in the office. She suddenly became hostile, demanding to know how I knew about that. I explained that I had just checked my office and found neither papers nor keys. She immediately threatened to call the police, and when I asked why, she accused me of admitting to trying to steal car keys. Things were getting heated, and we were both yelling now. I started to say something but stopped myself, took a deep breath, and asked if she even knew who I was. Suddenly, this older woman appeared out of nowhere, turned out to be the counter person's mother. The woman, a true Karen, didn't care who I was and started screaming for security. When the security guard arrived, the counter person demanded he lock me in a closet while she called the police and the owner. The guard started to question this, but I agreed to go with him, giving him a knowing wink as we walked to my office. There I explained everything after calling my partner to play along. About 10 minutes later, my partner arrived with 2 police officers. The counter person immediately pointed me out as a culprit. When my partner asked what she meant, the first officer explained that she was accusing me of trying to steal cars. My partner then revealed that I was his business partner and co-owner of the company. The counter person went pale and tried to dismiss the whole thing, telling the officers they could leave. As the second officer started to go, I stopped them, bringing up the still missing car and paperwork. My partner gave her an ultimatum: 1 minute to reveal the car's location or face jail time, reminding her about her contract. Breaking down in tears, she confessed that her mother had forced her to give her the car for 3 days after finding out where she worked. I offered a compromise, telling her to call her mother and have her return the car, saying she could exchange it for a Toyota or Ford instead. While the officers and I had coffee in the office, Karen arrived 30 minutes later. I had our security guard block the exit before confronting her. Seeing she couldn't escape, she tried to blame her daughter, claiming she had willingly given her the car. When the officers started to cuff her, her daughter fell to her knees, begging us not to take her mother to jail. Karen smugly encouraged us to listen to her daughter. During the car inspection, everything seemed okay except for some beer cans and cigarette smell. I was about to let it go when Karen suddenly pulled out her keys and carved a huge line down the passenger door, calling it a souvenir from a beautiful lady. I told her that I had been planning to drop the charges and even offer her another car for free, but now she was definitely going to jail. Karen responded by spitting in my face, saying that's what I got for being a jerk. She then spat at the officer too while shouting that he didn't know how to do his job. This earned her an additional assault on an officer charge. The counter person ultimately pressed charges against her mother too. We discovered she was only 17, and her mother had been forcing her to do things like this for a while. Karen was charged with multiple counts of theft, destruction of property, assault, child endangerment, and several other charges related to her minor daughter. I kept the counter person on staff. She's actually quite competent now that she's free from her mother's influence. The Mercedes got fixed up good as new, and Karen's paying for every penny of the repairs from whatever she manages to earn in prison. I've been bowling since I was 7, and over the years, I've built up quite a collection of equipment. 4 bowling balls, each serving a different purpose. Shoes, cleaners, wrist guards. The whole setup cost around $900. My parents saved up for months to get me these, knowing how passionate I am about the sport. I'm actually pretty good at it too, regularly competing in junior tournaments. Last weekend, I was at my local bowling alley for some practice. I started with my warm-up routine using my plastic ball. It's the basic one that doesn't do any fancy curves. I was deliberately throwing some gutter balls to get my form right, which resulted in a pretty low score of around 45 for my first game. I noticed this woman nearby smirking at my score. You know the type. The "my kid is better than everyone" kind of parent. I just smiled to myself knowing what was coming next. In my second game, I threw almost all strikes, ending with a 279. Her jaw practically dropped. I followed it up with a 213 and then a 259. That's when her kid, who looked about 10, came over to my lane. He asked if he could try my ball. The ball was 15 pounds, which is pretty heavy for a kid his age, but I figured I'd let him try the plastic one since it's relatively cheap and easy to replace. I told him he could try it if he was able to lift it. To my surprise, he managed to pick it up and roll it down the lane, knocking down 4 pins. I went to retrieve my ball from their lane's rack, and that's when things got weird. His mother grabbed my arm and demanded to know where I was going with what she claimed was her son's ball. Confused, I explained that it was my ball, and I had only let him borrow it for 1 throw. She insisted that I had given it to her son and that it was now his. I tried explaining again that I had bought the ball and hadn't given it to her son. I had just let him try it. She yelled at me to give it back. She tried to snatch the ball from my hands, but I pulled away and put it back on my rack. That's when her kid decided to grab my most expensive ball, my halo. I shouted for him to stop and grabbed his wrist to stop him, which was apparently the wrong move. The mother screamed at me not to touch her son and actually slapped me on the back of my head. Hard. I warned her not to touch me or I would call the manager. Instead of backing off, she shoved me to the ground. I hit my head pretty hard on the floor. While I was dazed, they started grabbing my equipment. I managed to get up and snatch my bag and halo back from the kid. She called me a little jerk and charged at me, but I sidestepped and she tripped. That's when the security officer, who happened to be my friend's dad, came over. The woman immediately started screaming that I'd stolen her son's equipment. The officer asked if I could prove the equipment was mine. I pulled out my phone and showed him pictures from my recent tournament with all my gear, plus some maintenance photos. The woman's face turned bright red. She started yelling that the photos were fake and manipulated. The bowling alley manager came over, having watched the whole thing. She told the woman to leave before the officer had to escort her out. The woman threatened to speak to the owner about this, threw a $20 bill at the manager, and stormed out. The manager gave me some free ice cream for my trouble, but the drama wasn't over. When I went to leave, she was waiting in the parking lot. She demanded that I give her son my stuff, claiming I didn't deserve it. I threw out my ice cream, getting ready for round 2. I refused, telling her it was my equipment. She screamed, "Now!" and lunged for my phone, but I dodged her. I pulled out my pocket knife, which I was legally allowed to carry, in self-defense, and she started screaming about assault. The officer came running out, looking completely done with the situation. The officer told her to leave, but she kept screaming about how I'd tried to kill her. I handed my knife to the officer and explained what happened. While he was putting her in handcuffs, her kid started hitting his legs. I actually had to pull the kid away to stop him from attacking the officer. Later, I found out through a friend that she was arrested not just for assaulting a minor, but they also found crack in her possession during booking. Between that and the assault charges, she ended up serving time. Her kid went to live with his dad, who apparently was a much more reasonable person. I still see him at the bowling alley sometimes, but now he asks politely before trying anyone's equipment. I work in a pretty big office building downtown, been there for about 7 years now. I actually started as an intern right out of college and worked my way up to project manager. It's a decent place to work, good benefits, nice colleagues, and management that usually listens to our concerns. Usually being the key word here. When COVID hit, we all went remote like everyone else. I actually enjoyed working from home, got to spend more time with my cat, and didn't have to deal with the hour-long commute. But after about 18 months, management decided it was time for us to start coming back to the office, at least 3 days a week. Now, I'm not one of those people who freaked out about every little thing during COVID, but I did try to be careful. Wore my mask, kept my distance, used hand sanitizer, the usual stuff. A lot of my coworkers felt the same way. We were all trying to be cautious without going overboard. One thing that really bothered me was the bathroom situation on our floor. See, the men's bathroom had this weird setup where you had to touch the door handle after washing your hands. The trash can was placed between the sinks and the door, so you'd throw away your paper towel and then have to grab the handle with your clean hands. Not ideal, especially during a pandemic. One day I come in and notice someone had moved the trash can right next to the door. Brilliant. Now you could open the door with your paper towel and toss it in the trash on your way out. Sure, you had to sidestep it a little when walking through the door, but the hallway was wide enough that it wasn't really an issue. For a few weeks, everything was great. Then the Office Safety Committee got involved. Let me tell you about the Office Safety Committee. They're this group of middle managers who take their safety responsibilities way too seriously. They once spent 3 weeks debating whether we should be allowed to have personal fans at our desks because someone might trip over the cord. My colleague asked if I'd seen what the safety committee had done to the bathroom trash can. When I said I hadn't, they explained that the committee had moved it back to its original spot and put up a sign about it. I went to check it out myself, and sure enough, there was this official-looking sign: "Do not move trash can. Poses safety hazard by blocking door." I expressed my disbelief to my colleague about how ridiculous this was, since the trash can barely took up any space. They agreed with me but reminded me that once the committee makes a decision, they never change their minds. The next few days were interesting. Nobody wanted to touch that door handle with their bare hands. We'd all gotten used to the paper towel method, so people started throwing their paper towels across the room into the trash can as they left. Some made it, some didn't. Karen from accounting, who was on the office safety committee, started having a fit about it. She began scolding everyone, asking who raised us, and insisting this wasn't a basketball court. When I suggested that maybe the trash can should be in a more convenient location, she snapped back that the trash can was exactly where it needed to be according to safety protocols. She told me that if I had a problem with that, I should take it up with the committee. I told her that's exactly what I plan to do. I drafted an email to the entire Office Safety Committee, copying our floor's management team. I included photos of the paper towel situation and explained how their safety solution had created an even bigger safety hazard: wet paper towels on the floor that people could slip on. The committee called an emergency meeting. Of course they did. Karen was apparently furious that I'd gone over her head. During the meeting, she demanded to know who I thought I was, arguing that they couldn't just change safety protocols because people were too lazy to walk to the trash can. However, the committee had sided with me, pointing out that the current situation was creating more problems than it solved. Within a week, they installed a new, slim, wall-mounted trash can right next to the door. Problem solved, right? Well, Karen wasn't happy about being proven wrong. She confronted me, saying she hoped I was happy that they had to spend money on a new trash can just because I couldn't follow simple rules. I responded that I was indeed happy, since now we had a cleaner bathroom and didn't have to worry about touching germ-covered door handles. I pointed out that it seemed like a win-win situation to me. She stormed off after that. During the next company town hall, our CEO actually mentioned the bathroom situation as an example of positive change through employee feedback. Karen had to sit there and listen as they praised the solution she'd fought against so hard. These days, the bathroom is clean, people can avoid touching the door handle with their bare hands, and Karen gives me the stink eye every time we pass in the hallway. Worth it. I've been a train driver in the United Kingdom for about 7 years now. The job itself isn't difficult once you get used to it. You learn the routes, the signals, and the procedures. What makes it challenging are the passengers, especially during certain times. My weekday commuters are actually quite pleasant. They're usually business people or regular workers who know exactly where they're going and how the system works. They understand delays happen sometimes and generally remain civil about it. But weekend travelers, that's when things start getting interesting. They show up without having done any research about their routes, and when we inform them about engineering works affecting their journey, they act like we personally arranged the maintenance just to ruin their day. Teenagers during summer holidays. Most of them just ride the trains to kill time, treating public transportation like their personal playground. They have no respect for other passengers or the schedule we need to maintain. Last week, I encountered this teenage girl who would end up becoming quite a problem. She deliberately blocked the doors from closing at one of our stops. Now, this isn't just annoying, it's dangerous and affects hundreds of other passengers. I made my usual announcement over the public address system, telling whoever was holding the doors that while they might not have anywhere to go, the other 100 or so people on board wanted to get home or to work. Usually, this announcement is enough to shame them into behaving, or at least get other passengers involved in sorting out the situation. But not this time. This girl was determined to be difficult. I had to leave my cab and walk back to deal with the situation personally. When I approached her, she wouldn't even look at the other passengers. She just stared at me with this defiant expression and told me to get the police if I wanted to. So that's exactly what we did. We had to wait on the platform for 40 minutes until the police arrived to remove her. The other passengers were understandably frustrated, but what could we do? We can't physically force someone off the train. We have to follow proper procedures. Just last night, after a grueling 9-hour shift, I was at the second-to-last stop before taking the empty train back to the depot. I was exhausted and just wanted to finish my shift. When I tried to close the doors, they wouldn't lock properly. After a few attempts, I realized the problem was with the door right behind my cab. I got out to check, and who do I see? The exact same girl from last week, pulling the same stunt. I called her out, mentioning that she was the same girl who had held up my train for 40 minutes the previous week. She immediately denied it, claiming it wasn't her. She was lying through her teeth. What she didn't know was that I'd already received a radio message warning me about potential delays at the terminus station due to an incident they were dealing with, and the police were already there. I gave her 3 options. She could either shut up and sit down, I could drag her out, or I could get the police to deal with her. The mention of police seemed to trigger some memory of her previous experience because she finally went to sit down. What she didn't know was that I used the 6-minute journey to the terminus station to contact the signaler and request police assistance anyway. I wasn't about to let her get away with this behavior again. When we pulled into the terminus station, 6 police officers were waiting on the platform. Instead of opening the passenger doors, I only opened my cab door to let the police in. When they entered, her jaw dropped open like a fish out of water. I couldn't resist reminding her that she had been the one who told me to call the police in the first place. The officers escorted her off the train, and I heard later that she received a significant fine and a temporary ban from our rail service. I finally got to take my empty train back to the depot, slightly delayed but satisfied that this particular problem passenger wouldn't be disrupting any more services for a while.